This stream is about to start. We'll talk about code or whatever we'll talk about today. It's about to start, so please hang tight while I check that everything is okay. Sound check, camera check, lights check. How's my hair? Oh, wait, I don't have any hair. Maybe put some pants on and I am good to go. So get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Hi, I'm Leandro Facchinetti, and let's write some code together, shall we? What I have on the menu today is to draw knobs on the user interface for the auto mixer. This is very exciting. On Monday, we had John Matthews from Toucan Studios joining us on the stream, and he talked about how he does it for his plugins. So we learned about Knobman and the sprite maps and how to use Bleach to section the sprites on the sprite map. All of that was a lot of fun. Now it's time to do it ourselves in the Automixer plugin, which I think is the first plugin in the series that we are doing that really deserves having its own knobs on the user interface. It will make everything more compact. It will allow us to show and hide things and group things in a way that makes sense. And I think it will be nicer to look at, which is also an important factor. So the difference between the approach that we learned on Monday and the approach that we are going to try to follow today is in how we draw. John Matthews was using Knobman to produce an image of the button, and we will explore the notion of drawing knobs using just the JSFX drawing primitives. The reason why I'm going to explore this is first because I want to learn more about it. I want to see how far we can take that approach. Also, conceptually, I think it's nicer to have to not manage a bunch of images. It's not the biggest deal. It's probably even faster to bleed an image than it is to draw using the primitives. I don't know. But in any case, I thought it would be interesting to see what we can do with the bare drawing primitives in JSFX. And also aesthetically, I am not going to go for things that look like real knobs you would find in hardware. I am not trying to use the skeuomorphism design language in my plugins, because from a user's perspective, it's not what I like looking at. So we are going to go for something more minimalistic. I find that things like shadows and highlights sometimes help communicate the intent. For instance, if a button has some highlights, it stands out from the page, and that's helpful. But there is a lot to be said about a flatter design, and that's what we are going to try to explore. And Mage is here. Hello. I'm here, been cooking up a storm in the kitchen. Yeah, I like watching my streams when I am doing chores around the house. I hope that you find this entertaining. All right. So let's get to first we will explore some existing knobs on existing user interfaces that I think that first look and work nice. And second, I think that they will be doable in JSFX just using the drawing primitives. Then we will look at the drawing primitives in JSFX, because to be honest, I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. And then we will try to start cooking something up. We'll see how that goes. So this is the first reference, and I'm not going to actually open Ableton Live and play around with the knobs. I did that before the stream, but I know that when I open Ableton Live, it tries to take over the audio interface and messes up the whole audio for the stream. Let's not do that, and instead just look at the user interface on the website. So what they have going on is a semicircle and a line, and that's all. They color the semicircle as you move the knob around, and that's it. And I really like the simplicity of this. I know that Ableton Live kind of looks like something straight out of the 90s or the early 2000s, because it is something that came straight out of the early 2000s. They haven't changed the interface that much since the early days. But I think it works very well. So this is a design reference that we'll keep in mind. And another one, this one I am not going to open because I don't have that kind of money laying around, but it is the FabFilter plugins. I think that they look very nice. Have never worked with them actually, so I don't know. I don't have that kind of money. So these knobs, they look nice. I don't like some of the things about this, and I don't like some things about that, so I don't think we will try to replicate what we are looking at. They are just references. For this, I don't really like how it does not stand out from the page. I think that it would be nice to have this a circle here with a different color, perhaps slightly darker or slightly lighter than the background, to create a bit more of a hierarchy. But I really like how they have just one line and one semicircle, so I think that we may explore this notion. And over here on this one, they sort of have what I am talking about. They have a semicircle, it may be too small. So they have a semicircle here around, and in this case, I'm not even sure if the semicircle is indicating the position of the knob. I don't think it is. But they have a semicircle around a circle, and they have a little line. What I don't like about this one is all the highlights and shadows. I think we can go with something flat like Ableton, but something more like this in structure. And one thing that I'm definitely not going for is realism. It will not look like an actual button. Even though I have this idea, and I'm going to run it by you all. See if you like it, let me know. I thought about just borrowing these knobs from the REAPER user interface. We can sort of recreate them using JSFX, but if you look carefully, you will see that there is a bit of a highlight and a bit of a shadow. So I think that the best way to recreate this would be to actually use an image, but we can use a strategy that is much simpler than the knobman strategy that we talked about on Monday. Because this image has perfect radial symmetry, we can have just one image and rotate it when bleeding. And we would need one image for the button, one image for the highlights and shadows. Because when you rotate the button, you don't want the highlight to go down. You want the highlight to be there. So you would want the highlight to be a transparent PNG that stays in place. Same for the shadow. And then this inner thing, perhaps it could even be drawn. I guess the only thing that changes is this little line. And perhaps that could be drawn using the JSFX primitive. So we would have an image for the background and one line drawn in JSFX. Perhaps we'll do something like this because it goes well with the rest of the REAPER interface. I don't know, we'll see. But yes, I guess another reason to not go with images is that I will not need to worry about high definition displays. We talked about this on Monday and how the Toucan Studio plugins look a bit blurred on high definition displays, because he would have to recreate a bunch of images, redo a bunch of the layout. If we don't use images, we sidestep this whole issue. We'll see. It will be a fun exploration. Oh, and it looks like everyone is here. Hello, John and Dale and Dave. It's great that you are all here. Right, rotating the image, you could just draw the line. No, yes. Yeah. If the thing was anything, if the button was anything more interesting than just a line, it would probably become an image if you wanted to do it like perfectly. For instance, this kind of curve is possible in JSFX. We have a library function to do Bezier curves, so we could draw this using the JSFX primitives, but it gets annoying. I think I would prefer to have this as an image that I rotate and have another layer that is the highlight. That's how if I was tasked with recreating these buttons in JSFX, that's how I would do it, I think. But I'm not interested in doing that. I'm interested in drawing with the primitives, and then I will be able to pull tricks like change the color of the button. I don't know. It will be more in our control. We'll see. Let's refresh our minds in the library functions that we have at our disposal. We don't have a lot, but we have something. Let's see. So we can draw lines, rectangles. We can draw specific pixels, which is interesting because I remember at some point drawing rectangles with width and height of 1 because I don't remember. Yeah, I didn't remember about this. So there is probably still somewhere on the library where we use this with width and height of 1. Let's check real quick. Well, in this case, if the stroke width is 1, then this is the place where we draw Bezier curves. We would be drawing a single pixel. Yeah, but it looks like no, we are no longer doing that. And truth be told, this with a single pixel treats the case of high definition displays very naturally, because the single pixel can be a square of 2 by 2 pixels on Retina displays, while this will not treat that case, because this will literally be just 1 pixel. So even if the stroke width for drawing the Bezier curves is 1, that 1 is what I like to call the logical pixel, which is actually a square of 2 by 2 in high definition displays. So there you have it. Set pixel probably will not be useful to us. I really hope that I don't have to get to this level. If I have to get to this level, I promise I will be using images. And Arya is here. Hello. How are you doing? Looking forward to streaming with you again in the near future. Oh, this is interesting. You can get the value of a pixel that is already drawn on the screen. This opens things up for so many clever little tricks. Cool stuff. Okay, draw number. That is good to know, because I remember converting numbers into strings and then drawing strings. I didn't know that draw number was a thing. I'm pretty sure if I look for something like this, oh, it only occurs here. And in this case, it makes sense because there is a label. Oh, so there you have it. What I searched for, by the way, is the format string for formatting a number into a string. That's what the D stands for. It stands for, I guess, digit. Okay, draw character is something that we rarely need because we have draw string these days, but draw string is new. So you will find old plugins that still use draw character, and they draw character by character on the user interface. It is ridiculous. Anyway, we are using this. Measure string we are also using. Set font, that will not be helpful for buttons. Being able to blur is kind of interesting. I don't think we will do this, but one thing that happens with buttons is that sometimes you want to display a button that is disabled. In some situations, it makes sense to hide a button that is disabled. But in some situations, it makes sense to show and disable the button. So you need to communicate that that button is disabled somehow. And typically what people do is change the opacity. The button becomes a bit transparent. But it could be nice to blur the button instead. It's eye candy, and it's probably worse in terms of performance, but it could be fun. Then there is the bleach, which we would use if we were using images, but we are not. And all of this has to do with external images that we are not using. This one is to draw gradients. And it only works in rectangles. I don't think we are using this because I am not a big fan of gradients when it comes to designing stuff. And also because it's restricted to rectangles. So if we wanted to do a circle, we would need to mask. And I think that most of our knobs are going to be circular because that's what takes less space, right? If we wanted sliders, we would be using JSFX sliders. But there is an argument to be made about sliders on the actual user interface. But anyway, we are going to go with knobs because they take up less space, and most of them are going to be circular. So yeah, I don't like gradients. Let's just forget about this. This is kind of an interesting thing that we touched on many streams ago, but this is what you use if you want to do a mask, for instance. Let's hope that we don't need this. Let's hope that we don't need this as well, because it does have to do with bleeding images. Okay, now we are getting there. Drawing a circle is something that we will need. Perhaps we should take note of the things we like. So we have these four that are interesting. And these two and those two are pretty much the same. The only difference is in the interface, and I tend to, the only difference is that this version will take in account the current position of the cursor. This version will not take that in account. I tend to dislike these versions that take in account the current position of the cursor because, and when I say cursor, I don't mean the mouse cursor. I mean, there is a drawing cursor. It's like a pencil moving around the frame buffer. But I tend to dislike those versions because inevitably you find that you need to manipulate the origin in some other way. Unless you're doing something in a tight loop, I think that these versions are better. Okay, so then there is a bunch of stuff with strings and numbers and... Oh, hang on. I don't know about this. Oh, cool. Is this a way of doing this? Because what I'm doing is I'm first using a function to format a string, and then I'm using another function to draw the string, and it seems like this is an auxiliary function that does both at once. I don't think we actually want to use this because we have much more going on in terms of drawing. We take colors and more meaningful names for the concepts that are bitmaps. So I don't think we can actually use this in the library, but it's nice to know that it exists. And then we skipped over all this and got to circle. And then rounded rectangles probably will not be useful for this. But then we have this one. This one will be useful. It is similar to circle. I don't know why it's ordered this way on the documentation. It certainly makes more sense for this to be near the rectangle way above. Perhaps this is just historical. They add stuff and they add to the end of the document. No, because this is for REAPER 5 and this is for 4.6. Anyway, so this is a function that draws an arc between two angles, specified in radians. I think that we can use this to draw something like that. The problem is this will be an arc of a single pixel. So we will have to draw perhaps like 4 of these arcs with increasing radii, I don't know how to say this, the plural of radius. And radiuses, I'll go with that. We have to draw 4 arcs with increasing radiuses of 1 pixel to draw thicker lines. And this says JSFX triangle, but really what it is just polygon. So we can say any coordinates and JSFX is going to fill in that space between the coordinates. This is for mouse interactivity. We are going to follow the same approach we followed on Monday. We are going to start by trying to draw a knob for an existing slider. Then we will hide the slider, which we actually didn't do on Monday. But anyway, it's easy enough. We just changed the label of the slider to start with a minus sign, and then it will be hidden from the interface. And then we will try to incorporate mouse interactivity. So we're going to start by drawing, then make it interactive. And this is also about interactivity. So I'm going to separate these notes here. But this is super interesting, and it's something that we don't use in any of our plugins. But it is used by John Matthews, it's used by Justin Johnson, and I'm probably going to use it for some things in the auto mixer, like the group number. So I want to keep this in mind. And this one, I know about it. I remember reading this before. And I don't know of a single plugin that does this, which is to change the cursor. Is there a plugin that uses this? It appears that Psyche is using this in the Sequence Effects Compact, the MIDI arpeggiator, and this is the sequenced effect again. Arrow. Interesting. Let's play around with this real quick and see if we can find this, because as you can see, not many people are using this. I'm not sure I know exactly what it does. I think it changes your cursor from being an arrow to being something like this. I don't know, but how is it useful in the wild? That's what I'm interested in. So let's open sequenced effects. And I'm not sure what I need to do to make that happen. What will change the cursor? Oh. Okay, perhaps that's what changes the cursor. But you know what's interesting? It says the only invocation of this function is to set the cursor to an arrow. And yet, that's not an arrow. This is an arrow. That's a expander? I'm not even sure what to call it. And yeah, interesting, tricky. We should play around with this real quick just to satisfy my curiosity. Let's go into the good old test plugin. In this case, we don't even need the library. We just want to and what is current cursor? Oh. Custom cursor name is arrow, but the resource ID is a fallback. Ah, this is a fallback. This is the cursor. So that's why the little separator kind of cursor was showing up because of this resource ID. Sets the mouse cursor resource ID is a value like that for an arrow cursor. Cursor is a string description that will be override. No, that will be override is not English. The resource ID if available. In either case, resource ID should be non-zero. Where does this number come from? I'm pretty sure it has to do with something like custom cursors. No. Is this magic number present on the Psyche effect? Yes, it is. And I'm pretty sure that this is going to be the separator kind of thing. Interesting. Where do these numbers come from? Probably people who do their own themes will know. But anyway, let's put this number here and load our test effect. And nothing happens. Interesting. This number could also be used. And this number could also be used. And we didn't get this one yet. And those are all the numbers. Let's see what they do. This one we already tested. It doesn't do anything. So doesn't do anything. What does this do? Doesn't do anything either. Starting to get the feeling that nothing will happen here. Oh, something happened. Nice. We get this kind of cursor. And I don't know what to call this, so let me go to the documentation for CSS and get the names from there. Yeah, it's not really resizing, is it? It's more like moving. Yeah, it's this one, call resize. I still think that it's not really resizing, it's more like moving, but whatever. That's that. Now I want to double check this. Yeah, it really doesn't do anything. Oh, because it is the same. It is the same. Oh, man. No, it's not the same. The last digit is different. Okay, let's see what this last one does. I'm gonna bet that it's the vertical version. And it is. So this is row resize. Well, there you go. You live, you learn. That was a nice tangent. Let's see what you all have to say. Could be useful for modifier keys. Mouse cursor changes when you hold shift to adjust Q, for instance. True. Try GFX at cursor dash. I think it sets the crosshair. Where are you getting these numbers from? From the Win32 API? Wow. I am not surprised, but yep, it does the text selection thing. That's nice. And what is that one called in CSS? I'm really showing my web developer ways here, aren't I? It's the text. And naturally, we will need to include these mappings from numbers to meaningful names as part of the design system, as part of the library. So I will take this out of here and into the long list of stuff that we want to do in the library. Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. Border resize. Moving a line resizes adjacent boxes. True. Yeah, there is also that for hand and a couple of others, though not all work in macOS. Ah. Ooh. And the good fellows at Microsoft must have done what the good fellows at MDN did, where you put your cursor on top of the documentation. It shows that for your operating system. Sure they did that, right? No, they did not. But I'm sure they included images like these, right? No. Well, whatever. I'll take what I can get. And you said that you gave me a magic number that is probably hand. It is not. Did I get the wrong number from the chat? No, I did not get the wrong number from the chat, but let's reload the plugin just in case. Oh, it is hand. It is hand. You are right. Which in CSS would be called, I forget. That one I should know. And it was not this kind of hand. It was this kind of hand. So it's more like drag and drop kind of thing. Yeah, I want to say it's the grab one. Yeah, at some point in the future, we will dive into the magic numbers and find all about that, but not today. This tangent is over. Let's get back to what we were doing. We were here, and then these are variables that have magic meaning, but no other drawing facilities going on. Yeah, so now we know everything that we have at our disposal, and there is not a lot. It's a good thing that I'm going for aesthetics of simplicity, because there is not a lot. let's make do with what we have. Perhaps using that test plugin will be the best option because we can just hard code some values real quick. Yeah, let's go back to that test plugin. And I will have a slider that I will call I want this to be a realistic thing, but I have to think about it because on Monday we used this example of threshold, but the threshold has a special behavior where the highlighted part of the knob is to the right. So I guess let's do attack. And let's make it very simple, starting at 0, going to 100. There you go. Let's draw first a circle. So for that, I will set the color to, well, the background is black. So let's set this to be a grayish color. This is a number between 0 and 1, where 0 is black, 1 is white. So it's going to be a gray that is halfway between white and black. Then let's draw a circle. And I will have variables for where my button is. And following our style, any variable that lives in the JSFX block starts with a JSFX prefix because we want to avoid clashing names with other parts of the code, like the audio portion of the code. Not that it matters in this exploration, but still. And I will have a notion not of radius. I'm thinking ahead and thinking about how I will want these function libraries to work. I don't think I want the notion of radius. I think I want the notion of bounding box. There are two ways to conceptualize this. I can think of, I will give you the center position of the button and the radius of the button. Or I can give you the XY coordinate of the top left and give you the width and height. And that second option is more consistent with the function library, the library functions that we see in JSFX. Things like drawing rectangles will follow this form of XY of the top left, then width and height. I'm tempted to go with the second route. It does have the consequence of, if your cursor is here, it's in the bounding box, but it's not in the circle, and still you will be able to click and drag. But I think that that may be an advantage, really. So I will say that the button has a width of 10, and it will be a circle, so it's symmetrical. I will not think about width and height. I will think of size. I know that size is the diameter, which is just double the radius, but I want to conceptualize this in terms of size. Thinking about the bounding box, not thinking about the circle in the bounding box. But we know that the radius is going to be the diameter divided by 2. Oh, and this is actually not x and y, because this is the x and y of the top left. So I need to take, and these coordinates are the coordinates of the top left of the bounding box, while this function expects the center of the circle. So I will need to add half of the size. And then in terms of filling, I think that filling the circle will be the default and anti-aliasing enabled will be the default, but we'll see. Well, it is not filling the circle, and this is much too small. Also, it's not taking in account retina, which may not translate on the stream, but for me, well, I guess it will not translate on the stream because the stream is 180p, it's full HD, while I am looking at a screen that is high definition. So you will not see this, but for my own sake, I will say GFX extra retina of 1, and then that will enable high definition mode. And this size is much too small, so let's make it like 30. And fill was not the default, so let's say that we need to fill. And I think it's still much too small. Let's go with 50. This is around the, this is a little bit bigger than this, and I think it's about the right size. Yeah. What happens when I turn anti-aliasing on? What happens when I turn this off? Let's see all the variations. Yeah, if I turn this off, then all the coordinates go out of whack. But I do see blurriness around the edges. So we want to do it like this. This is much crisper. And if I turn anti-aliasing on, I want to say that I see a change. But do I? Oh. Okay. If I'm not sure this is going to translate well on the stream, so I'm going to describe what I see. If I put the number 1 here, and if I take it out, nothing changes. But if I put the number 0, then I do see aliasing around. So anti-aliasing on is the default. So this is how I'm going to write the code. Whole moving average 0.1. Are you saying that you have a... Oh, you saw this here. Yeah, I have plugins from all of you who watch this and sometimes send me plugins. I have Tails library, I have Bose plugins, I have everything in here. And I have that specifically so that I can do things like this and I can search for what you all are using in your plugins. All right. Next, we want to draw a line that moves around according to the value of this slider. I think that's the logical next step. But Arya says you should set a hotkey to insert test plugin. Fair enough, I should set a hotkey for that. You know what I should do? I should have a MIDI controller with buttons to change scenes in OBS, mute and unmute my microphone, and for various fun things like what you're describing. Why a MIDI controller instead of the keyboard? Because it works even when Reaper is not in focus. Because it will be fun to do a little MIDI controller. Another one, I know I did this in the channel already, but I was thinking of using a Raspberry Pi Pico instead of the Arduino that we used before. So yeah, it will save me 3 clicks and take me hours and hours of development, but it would be fun to explore a Raspberry Pi Pico. I have never worked with MicroPython before. Also, we are doing more electronic stuff. I'm looking at my desk where I do the electronics things. We will do more of that. I bought an oscilloscope yesterday. That's why I didn't stream. I went to go and get the oscilloscope. It will be super fun. tune in the future for that. Let's draw a line that moves around. I want the line to start at the center, but I want it to go to the circle. That will be a bit tricky. Let's draw a line to begin with. The line will be white. The line will be white. The line will start at these coordinates. And the line will need to go to these coordinates. That's the easy part. These two lines are the easy part. That's the center of the circle. This is the hard part. This is the outside of the circle. For the time being, let's do this. Let's start with this, because then we can explore the anti-aliasing stuff and see what else we will want. Perhaps we will want to use our own library function that will give us thickness if a thickness of 1 doesn't work well. What this is going to do is draw a line between the center of the circle and the upper left of the bounding box. So the line will go outside the circle to the top left. Just like this. I think there is a chance that a single line will be good enough. It seems like that's what they have here. So perhaps a single line will be good enough. But let's play around with anti-aliasing before we move on. So if I turn it on, nothing changes. If I turn it off, something changes. So the default is on. And I think I will go with the default. Just like that. So now all there is to do is to compute these coordinates based on the value of this slider. Well, this slider is in milliseconds and it's going from 0 milliseconds to 100 milliseconds. Well, what we learned on Monday, and it is something that makes a lot of sense, is that we don't want to reason when drawing in terms of the unit of measurement of the slider. When communicating that quantity, which we will have a label below, just like the Ableton people have a label below the knob to indicate its value. And I do like this notion of having the value on the screen at all times. So this label, of course, needs to be milliseconds. But for drawing the line, we don't want to reason in terms of milliseconds. What we want is to normalize this value and to reason in terms of, I guess, 0 and 1, between 0 and 1. So 0 would be all the way to the left, 1 would be all the way to the right. And we always want to deal with this in a normalized way. So what I will do is I will take attack. I don't know how to write attack. I will take attack and I will say that the GFX version of that is that divided by the maximum. Which then becomes a number between 0 and 1. But just because it started with 0, so it is kind of a cheat what I am doing here. So I think that it's time that we import the library. And then we can use the map function. It will take the attack and it will map from minimum and maximum, it will take this range and it will spit out a value in this range. And this is guaranteed to work no matter the minimum and maximum. Map is an implementation of the couple lines of code that we saw on Monday with John, but I can put it on the screen real quick. This is the formula. This is what it looks like. It takes a value, the range that that value lives in, and the range you would like it to live in. And then it spits out a number. And that's what's happening here. We have a value, we have the range it lives in, and the range we would like it to live in. And this is what we get. Okay, so far we just have a normalized number. Now I want to transform this number into an angle. And I will be clever and convenient for myself in the future and give this angle in terms of degree, in terms of radians. So when we were designing a knob with John on Monday, I think that the knob went from 140 degrees to minus 140 degrees or something of that sort, if I remember correctly. So what we want is for 0 to map to the lower left and for 1 to map to the lower right. Let's find an image real quick. This will do. So we probably want the knob to go from around here to around there. I think I'm gonna go with 5/4 of pi to 7/4 of pi. Oh, but there is an interesting detail here. If I just say that I want to map from this to that, it will give me this range. So I guess I will say from 5/4 of pi to minus 3/4 of pi. Yeah, I think that will do. So if I map, instead of from 0 to 1, I will do this step by step. I was going to do this in the single step, but I'm going to do it step by step. So this is the attack normalized. When we end up implementing this, we will probably collapse these steps. This will be the angle. And now we have a value that is called JSFX attack normalized that lives between 0 and 1 because it is normalized. And we want it to be between 5/4 of pi yeah, like that, and minus 3/4 of pi. I think that this will do. Let's play around with this on the debugger real quick. So right now, our slider is at 0, so we expect the normalized value to be 0. Hang on, it's not showing. There you go. You know what? I'm gonna remove and re-add. So we have here the normalized is 0. And if I go all the way up, normalized becomes 1. The map function works. Then, in terms of angle, all the way to the left is supposed to be 5/4 of pi. And what is 5/4 of pi? it is 3.9 to blah, blah, blah. Perfect. And then as I move up, it should be going clockwise. And it should be getting to this. And it gets there. And more importantly, as I go, this value, as I go from left to right, this value needs to be decreasing because we are going clockwise and the circle in radians goes anti-clockwise, counterclockwise, goes counterclockwise. So this number needs to be decreasing, and it seems to be. Perfect. So now we know the angle that we want the line to be at. But our line drawing function does not receive an angle and a magnitude. It does receive coordinates in the rectangle form, x and y. So we need to convert from angle and magnitude to rectangular coordinates. We have a library function to do this, but I think that only under the imaginary numbers, under the complex numbers. And I think that we'll probably want to call it something more geometry related. But hang on. So we have the angle. I will also create the magnitude, which is this really. The magnitude is the length, and the length is half of the circle, half of the bounding box. So that's that. Yeah, sounds about right. Now let's dive into the library and find this. And that's not really what we want. This is what we want. If you are interested in knowing more about this, the Wikipedia article on, what is it called? Wikipedia rotation matrix. It seems like I have been here before. Yes, this Wikipedia article is really good at explaining how all of this works. We also covered this on a couple of streams at this point. We covered this on the stream in which we implemented this stuff. We covered this also on a stream with Aria, in which we were doing a plugin that is a ping pong delay that simulates a ping pong ball falling. And we wanted the user interface to show a waveform. It's still not complete, but we wanted to show a waveform following the path of the ball. And we implemented already this notion of rotation on the plane. And we ended up with equations like this. So there you have it. That's where all of this comes from. I'm not going to explain all of this from first principles again, because we already did that a couple times. But what I want is for these functions to have different names, because I'm not talking about real and imaginary. No, actually these functions. I'm not talking about imaginary numbers in this context. So I'm just going to go and here and drop the functions there and rename, and it will need to be part of the library at some point. But this is not real. I am interested in X, and this is not imaginary. I'm interested in Y. And this is not really the phase, it is the angle. And I'm gonna call this coordinate. Do I have something about coordinates? No. Yeah. So magnitude and angle. And at some point, of course, we will also have the converse. So given X and Y, you can get magnitude and angle using formulas just like this. That and that. Okay, so now that we have the angle and the magnitude, I guess I will put this in this order, then we can cook something up for this. I think that what we want is to do this. I'm getting a bit confused about the bounding box situation, but I think that what we want is something like that. And all of this trigonometry is stuff that you can skip if you are bleaching images. If you are drawing images using Knobman, then you don't have to worry about this at all. You just do the masking and the sprite map situation that we talked about on Monday. If you have a single image that you rotate, then you have a way of bleaching with rotation. It's only because we are drawing with the bare primitives that we have to do all this trigonometry. So if you're interested in doing knobs in JSFX and you're like, oh my god, this is trigonometry, I cannot take it, you can use the library or you can use images. It's up to you. Anyway, is this going to work? Is it going to work? It stands a chance. We'll see. That's cute. Naturally, it is doing a circle. It is doing a circle. See, this tip of the line is doing a circle, but the circle is all the way to the left and the top. So it has to do with this confusion I have about where to place things. It's probably missing this part. Hey, there you go. Well, not quite. First of all, this is not the lower left. And second, it seems to me as it's doing a full rotation, or almost. It's almost doing a full rotation. So what's up with that? You watching this, you're probably pointing at your screen and saying, Leandro, you stupid person. I know what's going wrong. But I don't know what's going wrong. Let me see if you can tell me my wrong ways. Oh, Siwitz is here. Hello. So Siwitz is asking about my birthday gift for my son because it includes a little noisemaker. We talked about this last Wednesday. My son's birthday is in October, so he hasn't really received the gift yet, but he is liking it a lot because sometimes we want to tweak something like, you know, the unicorn that is the knob cap, that fell off, so we had to glue it again in place, and that sort of maintenance that we have to do on stuff that we do ourselves, right? Because it's always a little sketchy, at least when I am doing this. So he plays around with the thing from time to time, and he likes it a lot. He even got the hang. He's about to become 2 years old, so he's very young. And he already got the hang of the fact that he needs to press the button to start and stop playing and to rotate the knob to change the pitch. He's not doing anything musical with the thing, but it's difficult to do something musical with that because it is such a bad noisemaker. Okay, it pays, but I'm always tired. May brave the winter and quit in April. Hey, Bo, I've been dashing into that. Okay. Can we export GUI assets from Adobe like PNG or SVG in JSFX plugin? We could set a dictionary to load the interface assets from. Fair point. Yeah, you can export GUI assets. You cannot do SVGs, but you can do PNGs. It would be great to do SVGs because then we wouldn't have to think about Retina displays all that much. But you can only do PNGs. And for more on this, I suggest that you watch Monday's stream. We covered this a whole lot, this whole notion of loading assets from the interface. What I am exploring right now is the other approach of drawing everything from scratch using the primitives, because I like this kind of interface and I like this kind of mathematics. But it is a possibility for sure. And beyond Adobe, there is this app called JNobMem that gives you sprite maps. So you can do fancy things that would be difficult to do with just a bunch of PNGs. And I bet you can do that with Adobe products as well, but JNobMem is meant for doing knobs. So it is aware of the concept of rotation and whatnot. Yeah. SVG would be dope, but I don't think it's supported. We had the JSFX documentation open, and I can check that real quick. Yeah. It is only PNGs. I think that JPEGs also work. We can do a quick search for file name and see what people have in terms of extensions. Gerange is using PNGs. Sonic Anomaly is using PNGs. It seems like everyone is using PNGs. Well, there you go. JPEGs are not supported. All right, whatever. It's called linear interpolation. Map is implementing linear interpolation. Not quite exactly, but yeah, I think you were talking about this, right? This function is doing linear interpolation, sort of, in a sense, yes. Yes, it is. Normally, knobs don't turn between 5 and 7 o'clock. How to do that? You're saying that our knob is doing a full rotation and it shouldn't. It should be more like this, where it stops around here and there. I agree. Yes, there is a mistake in the code. We are going to look into that real quick. Yeah, minus 140 and plus 140. Yeah. You know what? I'm just going to plug in these values because we do have a thing called degrees to radians. And since you are giving me the answer, I might as well just use it, right? It seems like the coordinate system we are using is not the same. And I conceptually, I think of the circle like this, where this is 0. So 180 degrees would be around here. That's not what I want. And minus 140 would be around here. So the code is doing what I expect. And it seems like you think of the circle as starting here. No, as starting here. You think of the circle starting here, and then 140 degrees would get around there. Minus 140 would get you around here. But yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. Let me finish what I'm reading here. But we were working with PNG. I'm doing a completely different thing. To some extent, I'm doing something different. Yeah. Can you do gradients in JSFX? Yes, you can. You use this function that will draw a gradient on a rectangle. If that's good enough for you, you are done. If you want a gradient on a different shape, you have, I think that the only way to do it is either you do the gradient yourself, interpolating between the colors and setting pixels or drawing lines or whatever. But if you want to use the grad rect, which is probably faster, so it's probably better. If you want to use this and you want to have a different shape, the only way I can think of doing this is draw this to a temporary buffer off screen, then have some kind of mask, then do this to crop the gradient to the mask, and then bleach that into the mainframe buffer. Now that I say this out loud, it may be almost the same or even worse than just computing colors and setting pixels by hand. If you want to do gradients that are static, go with images. If you want to do gradients that are changing but only ever so slightly, do sprite maps like we saw on Monday. If you really want to do gradients that are like super tricky, for instance in REQ, I remember there being one of those. Oh, it's not a gradient. It's not a gradient. It's just a fill. It's just a fill. On the fab filter, they do gradients, right? They do. Yeah. So if you want to do this kind of gradient, you will have to draw pretty much each pixel by hand. Or crop in some way. Anyway, I think that answers the question. He's drawing the interface using code, but what if we use SVG? SoftTube uses the same. It would make it possible to scale it up to any percentage. Oh, but the drawing capabilities in JSFX are vectors. This will scale up. It will never be blurry. SVGs would be probably more ergonomic to use. But hey, we are doing everything with our bare hands for fun. We need a test tool to test JSFX without using the DAW. Who knows? Probably IDE. I don't know. Would it be nice to be able to run some automated tests? Yeah, but the use of them are, I think, would be pretty limited. I think that the thing we do where we have automated tests in this form is good enough, really. Because most of the interesting things have to do with processing audio, and it is difficult to write unit tests for those. You would probably want to maybe save some result as a WAV file and then compare. But I don't know, I guess the effort would be too much. It would not be worth it, I don't think. And there is an IDE in Reaper. You saw me using this a couple moments ago. I don't like it for editing text because it doesn't have rectangular cursors. It doesn't have highlights of similar keywords. It doesn't have selecting things with Command D like that. So not ideal for editing text, but for debugging, it is freaking awesome. And when you change values and save, they are reflected in real time. It's super, super nice. Is JSFX open source? No. There is an implementation of EEL, which is the language in which we write JSFX, this language. That is open source. It's part of the Widow package. But the JSFX engine, so for instance, the thing that is aware of the init section, the thing that is aware of drawing the user interface, all of that is not open source. There is a plan, Justin Frankel said that there is a plan of open sourcing this, but currently it's not open source. There are open source alternatives like this, which is written in C++ and it hosts JSFX. And it works in other DAWs. There is also another host. somewhere in here in this project, there is another JSFX host. I forget exactly where it is, but it's a project by this person. So there are these open source alternative hosts for JSFX, but the real thing in REAPER is not open source yet. Oh, there you go. They'll answered already. Probably in future, I can implement that in my C++. Yeah. Anyways, JSFX is a very fast language and used in REAPER, though don't know if it was used in other DAWs, it would make a difference. Yeah, if you are thinking of this as like a performance perspective, JSFX is not as fast as C++. It is pretty good though, and it's much easier to use for beginners who are learning about digital signal processing. And the real-time feedback loop is great. Yeah. Later, you can make 1,000 of these simple noise generators, and that could be a more musical. No, the more oscillators you add, the less musical it becomes. Have you watched the video on the Mega Drone? It is super cool, but you cannot do much with it. You can do the THX deep note, but that's about it. It's just 90 degrees off now, so go 50 and minus 200. Thank you, Arya. Oh, see, I'm going to do this in the IDE just to show how nice it is to have these things in changing in real time. So you are saying 50 and minus 200. I love that I don't have to think about this myself. And it was minus 200. Yeah, but the other way around. Minus 200. And 50. And there you have it. It doesn't look right though. There you have it, but it doesn't look right. It looks like this is a bit higher than that. I do like this one, but I don't like that one. So let's think about this for a moment. I want to go 180 degrees plus... No, hang on, what the hell? This is not 50 degrees. This is upside down. Is it not? This being 50 degrees, this is going down. I wanted it to go up. What's wrong? That's why everything is messed up. Because I am conceptualizing my circles like this, like 50 would be around here, but the implementation is going down. There is some, maybe some sign in some operation that is messed up. Circles start at 3 o'clock. Yeah, we are in agreement. I was thinking of a gradient like the one in the REAPER pen knob. Yeah, this kind of thing. If you wanted to do this with the JSFX primitives, you would have to draw this gradient using that function that I mentioned and then mask. There is a video of mine, very old, in which I do this masking in the video processor. The thumbnail of the video looks like a rabbit, I think. So you can go watch that one if you're interested in knowing how to mask and doing the off-screen drawing and whatnot. But yeah, that's the only way I can think of doing this gradient, because it is a circular gradient. But really, the way I would do this, if I wanted to copy this exactly the same, I would probably do a PNG of just the gradient, so just the highlight, just the shadow. And the rest, I guess I could draw in JSFX the way that I'm doing now, because it is as simple as that. If it became anything more complicated than this, then I think that the strategy would be the sprite map that we saw on Monday. I was thinking of a gradient. Okay, it's a shame you can't set variable names for a slider, default, minimum, maximum, and default values to update the slider scaling in real time. Well, it is true that you cannot update the range of the slider in real time, but once we have our custom knobs, that's something we can do, because Reaper doesn't really care. If I put 200 here, then it will accept that. The variable now has a value of 200. So once we have a knob, and once we have the mouse interactivity going, we will hide this slider, and we will be able to set minimum and maximum. We will not be able to set defaults, I don't think, but we will be able to set minimum and maximum. All right, let's debug this situation we have in our hands here, because it's an embarrassing situation we have going on. So this is an angle of the normalized value is 1, that's correct. The angle is this number, which I would love to be able to copy. Am I able to copy? No. So I will just type it down. And what I expect is for this to be 50. And it is 50. So at least the conversion from degrees to radians and then back is consistent. Let's check that something like degrees to radians of, I want to say pi over 2, that's 90 degrees. I expect to see, oh, hang on, degrees to radians of 180. I expect that to be equal to pi over 2. That's not true. What is degrees to radians? Error parsing. What is degree to radians? That's pi? Oh, because it's 180. Let's say 90. That's correct. That's 1. Should I be subtracting instead of adding? I think I need to be subtracting instead of adding. Because I am here. This is the coordinate of this point. And I start with that. I start at that point, and then I subtract because I want to go to the left. Yeah, I think so. And again, 50 is around here. That's not what I want. Let's think this through again. Now that I made these negatives going, I think that perhaps the minus 140 and 140 was correct. No. Okay, Leandro. It's time to stop goofing around and actually think. Now that I have this minus, I think that perhaps my circle was correct after all. 5/4 of pi. And minus 3/4 of pi. Nope. Okay, these are the end positions that I want. The only issue is that I don't want it to go swinging down. I want it to swing up. Also, it's still going the opposite way. This 5/4 of pi is supposed to get me here, and it's getting me there. Ah, so annoying. That's not correct either. That's more incorrect. Is this coordinate x and y the wrong way around? No, the cosine is on the x-axis and the sine is on the y-axis. And real is on the x-axis, cosine is on the x-axis. Yeah, everything checks. You are watching this, you know what I'm doing wrong. Can you tell me? Now that's more like it. Hey, we are getting there. And it's not 3/4 that I want. It is... And that's the most convoluted way of getting to these results. But why did I need to add the x position and subtract the y position? Why did that work? I have no clue. I don't care. Because now the results are making sense. When I'm all the way to the left, I'm going to 5/4 of pi, which should be about here. Should it not? Yes, it should. 5/4. And minus 1/4 gets me there. So I'm going 1/4 of pi below. Perhaps we could be going a bit more. No, that's too much. But instead of going in fourths, we can always be going in eighths. And then 10. Like this. Now it needs to be bigger. No, I don't know why I'm mucking about with this. This feels comfortable. Yeah, I like it. I think we are doing it, people. I think we are doing it. That's too much. That's just perfect. And on the other side, that's too little. And that's just perfect. Okay, there you go. You all were trying to help me. I appreciate that. It should be 15 minus 330. Did we arrive at the same numbers? For instance, is this 50? No, it's 225. So we did not arrive at the same numbers. Where is 0 degrees though? Set that and see where you land. 0 degrees is supposed to be right here So if I set this one to 0, because we are at the end here, this is supposed to go all the way to right. And if I set this to pi and put the slider here, it should go straight to the left like that. Yeah. So yeah, divide the pi in 8 parts for 8 people. Then as you go down the pi in 8s, there will be 16 parts, because 16 divided by 8 is 2, and 2 pi is the whole circle. You know, I am starting to agree with Dale. I think I should be thinking of this in terms of tau. I think I like tau better than pi. Anyway, there will be 16 spots for you to go through because we are dividing pi by 8. And the full circle is 16 eighths, or 2. So you have 16 values to go to. You go 8 and then 2 more. And here you do 2 less, minus 2. This was unnecessarily complicated, but there you go. It's looking good. Oh, is it really? Yeah. There you go. I'm happy with this. I'm stopping this part. I would like, there is that one small detail on the REAPER interface that I think I like, and that's that this line is not touching the circle. So what I will do is I will let the magnitude be just slightly shy, perhaps even more, like that. That's very, very respectable, very presentable. I like the fact that this is darker because it looks like an indentation in the button instead of being lighter. So what I will do is change this to be black. In the end, we'll be using the design system. We'll be using the colors in the design system for this, but yeah, for now. And perhaps this kind of, let's play with different thicknesses because it's not standing out as much as I would like. Or perhaps let's just make the whole thing a little bit brighter. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. All right. Next, let's do mouse interactivity real quick. Let's borrow this from the waveform plugin because that one does mouse interactivity. Like this, changing the zoom. We will want lines that look like this. Mouse interactivity is something that I prefer to handle before I draw stuff. But perhaps these constants could live up there because it just so happens that I used the same names before, so it will work. And I can change this. And I'm pretty sure that there will be something to initialize this. Huh, no. Interesting. Perhaps there should be something to initialize this. Even though it's probably going to be 0, it would be better to be explicit about it. Yeah. Anyway, coming back to our plugin, if the interactive area is active, then don't change the zoom, change the attack. And in this case, this function will quantize everything to be on the same range and on the same, what is it called, in the same step. So I think I'm going to keep it. And we will need the notion of minimum, maximum, and increment. And I think I will want to add. No, I think I will want to subtract. Oh, and I will need the default. I think that this is all there is to it. It does not work. There are other plugins that we created that use this interactive area notion, right? Yes, there is another one. The volume plugin uses this. I'm pretty sure that I'm missing one part of the logic on the waveform display that was necessary for the volume. And perhaps it's necessary for this one as well. If I click and drag real quick, does it work? No. So maybe that's not it. Yeah, I think I'm going to start from scratch using this version. Because we developed this plugin after the waveform display, and this one does the right thing. We had this discussion when we implemented this, but we want to have a hidden variable that is the knobs notion of the slider value, and then we want to have the actual slider value. We want to have two variables for this because sometimes you are moving your mouse very slowly, so you would get to like half a millisecond, though the slider doesn't allow for that. But we want to keep that notion so that you can move your mouse slowly. Yeah. Oh, we are starting to use the library, so we need to do things like this. I'm not sure all of them are necessary, but some of them are necessary. Yeah. And this was for VolumeDB, a slider called VolumeDB. So if I replace all occurrences of VolumeDB with attack, it should be good. Except that I have a feeling that I used this variable already. No. So it should be good. Let's see. These values will probably have to be adjusted. And Tukan brought something interesting up. He asked people what these values should be. These are conversions. These are ratios to convert between pixels and, in this case, milliseconds, from pixels to milliseconds. And he got one number that kind of worked for any knob. I am not sure that we are going to follow this route. I think that we are going to tweak this number per knob, which is much more annoying to do. But depending on the kind of knob, you would want the response to be faster or slower, I think. So for something like attack, perhaps you would want the response to be relatively slow, but for something like frequency, you would want it to be a little higher. I don't know. But I have a feeling that we will want to play around with these values a lot, and I don't want to just hard code them into the library. And this is not necessary. And that's not necessary. Okay, let's give this a try. Yep, it is moving. Now the constants aren't great, so in this case it's moving much too slowly. But it is moving. Let's move, let's change this. So if I'm doing fine adjustment, I am not. So this is much too small. Let's make it 0.1. And I'm not using the scroll wheel, so that's not what I need to look at. Yeah, this isn't perfect, but it's better. And there you have it, a knob that we did with our bare hands. And if I click around, it doesn't work. If I click and drag here, it does work. We did a knob with our bare hands and mouse interactivity and everything. So we can now hide this slider. We can set its name to that. We still want to give it a meaningful description because that's what's going to show up in automation and that sort of thing. But here we go. And we have a knob. Another thing we learned is that if you click and drag this, it will not go here. No touched FX parameters. So we learned from John on Monday that we need to, whenever we are going to do this, we also need to say slider automate or automation. I forget. Automate. And we need to automate this, the attack, which is the slider. Now, when I click and drag, it shows up there. Perfect. Yeah, there are plenty of things that I want to improve on this. I would love to have a little ring there, I would love for you to have different defaults. Well, that's already in place, but we don't have any indication of what the default value would be. I would love to have something where, I guess it's not in this example, but in Ableton Live, there are some plugins that have like, let's say, a gain, and then it can go up or it can go down. So there is a little arrow in the middle to say that this is like your baseline, and then it goes up and goes down. Anyway, there are plenty of things to do, but this is already on its way. It is behaving. Lovely. Awesome. Let's see what you have to say. And then we'll wrap this up because we have been going on for a while now. Zero should have its origin at the bottom. Zero should have its origin at the bottom. Are you talking about this circle and you think that zero should be here? You are a madman. Personally, I would want a thicker line, especially when black. Yeah, fair. Let's play around with thicker lines real quick. Yeah, I think that this line perhaps should be 2 pixels instead of 1. So let's keep this around. And use our Bezier functions to draw with the stroke width. And that one will want start and end positions. That's what we have here. It will also want a color that now we can use from the design system. So I'm gonna get black. I would not use black in real life. I tend not to use pure black or pure white, but that will do for now. And the stroke width of 2 in this case. I said I was going to play with the stroke width and then I forgot about it. Thanks for reminding me. Whoa, no. That's way too much. And also it changes the thickness as it goes. Oh boy, this looks like crap. Yeah, the reason why it looks like crap is that if you look closely, you see some aliasing, and if you know how it's drawn, you'll see what I mean. The way that we draw these Bezier curves is we draw a bunch of squares following along the Bezier path. So you can sort of see the squares and you can see the aliasing, and it looks like a big old pile of poo. But if I set a stroke width of 1, it is not really just 1 pixel because this is a retina display. It's actually 2 pixels. So it will not look the same as this, even though it may look like it's the same because it's a stroke width of 1. But when we define stroke width of 1, we actually multiply by this variable, which is the number 2 when you are in a retina display, I think. Yeah, I think that's how it works. Anyway, yay, yeah, this is better. You can still see some of the aliasing. It's not perfect, but the thickness I think is right. So we can reduce aliasing by going into this and we used to have a constant that would be multiplied by this. And we removed that. Oh, well, I will multiply by, GFX X retina. Will that do the trick? It might. Yeah, it's still not perfect. You can still see aliasing. And I don't know. The aliasing makes it look like a pile of poo. So maybe having it too thin may be better than this. I don't know. If I multiply this by like 10, then it should be aliasing free. No, not even then. Not even then. Oh well. Yeah, the line here is much thinner than, for instance, here. It becomes thinner and thicker because of aliasing. Well, another way of doing this is to draw 2 or 3 lines side by side. Yeah, perhaps we should do that. For the time being, I thought that this looked like a piece of crap, so I'm not going to use it. I'm going to let this be too thin. Oh, it's very thin now. What happened? I removed GFX Satch. Can probably just go with color now. I will use GFX Satch. Black. Yeah, I'll go with this. I agree it is too thin. So let's have a to-do here. Which is a different strategy for having different thicknesses of lines. One strategy is to follow along the path and draw each pixel as you go, and the other strategy is to have a bunch of lines side by side. And I think that the second strategy that we have implemented at some point but got rid of it, I think that the second strategy may do better in terms of aliasing. We'll see. Yeah. Justin Franco promised that we would get different thicknesses of lines in JSFX at some point, but I don't think it saw the light of day. Yeah, otherwise hard to see it on a small knob. I agree. Probably just double thicker. Yeah, I think that doubling is the right decision because I am on a retina display, so I just want to have one logical pixel. Make a 1 pixel wide outline on the button. It will stand out against the gray. I agree. I was thinking of that. The FabFilter design reference has that. Has a little black outline. You can only do 1 pixel wide lines in JSFX. If you want thicker, you are going to need to draw several. Yeah. Just double code or make it, yes, exactly that. You just double the code of drawing and you add 1 to either the X or the Y coordinate. Yeah, fun stuff. By area, you're probably gonna at this point. The magical number is 1.5. Interesting. Oh, you mean you need to set a 0 point at the bottom, because that's where the knob's start and end points originate? I believe the 0 bottom refers to the screen, not the circle. See my comment slightly above it. I don't know what you're talking about. Looks like an Yamaha DM 2000 now. It will look better than this, okay, I promise. It's just a first sketch, but what is this? What is this? It's a mixing desk of some kind. And I really hate that if I click on this thing, it's going to open the website where it came from instead of opening a bigger version of the image. And these things never work well. Oh, I hate this. Yeah, I think you're talking about these kinds of knobs, or maybe even the on-screen knobs. Yeah, this is what you get when you work on a knob for, what is it, 2 hours at this point? Oh my God, 2 hours. But if you work on this for 2 hours, you get this. It will get much better. We'll do the outline. We'll do a thicker line. We'll do an outer ring. We'll do markings on the buttons to show the default. Come on, I have to start typing this down. We'll do outer ring showing value, similar to A buttons. So similar to this. And a marking for default value. And well, the label below, well, the label above with slider name, label below with slider value. I always want my values to be visible. We talked about this on Monday, and in my case, I'm not going for anything that resembles hardware. I'm not going for any, I'm embracing digital, so showing the value at all times makes sense to me. And yeah, more things, but I forget. I suppose you could create a library with a viewport and coordinate systems of your choice. Yeah, or just accept that JSFX draws from top to bottom. That makes more sense to me, because if you resize the screen, then all your coordinates would be out of whack. But if you resize your screen with a top left origin, then... Oh, so that's what you were talking about before. The zero bottom thing. You were talking about... Yeah, you were explaining to me why my code works. Okay, I finally get it. You were explaining to me why my code works, and specifically explaining this minus. It is because the coordinate system in geometry, the y coordinate, when it increases, it goes up. And in JSFX, when it increases, it goes down. That's why I had to subtract. Thanks for explaining to me the thing that I wrote. Finally, I get it. And then, yeah, you could create a library with this kind of coordinate system. But I think that in this context, it makes sense, because when you're resizing a window, the top left stays fixed. So I kind of like that the top left is the origin, and I don't have to do any crazy work to allow things to be resizable. Yeah, the knobs in the display of this. Yeah, the Google Images search doesn't show me the display, but yeah. Double click to return to default. That's already implemented. Double click. Double click. Double click. The code looks like this. It's part of the library. We wrote this together a couple sessions ago, but yeah, we have a notion of interactive area that is applicable to buttons, but it was also applicable to the other kinds of plugins that we did, for instance, on the volume plugin. On this plugin that is supposed to go on the MCP, like so. So on this one, you can click and drag, and it's not a knob, not really, but it is an interactive area. Yeah, so we will want to do things like hover and that sort of thing, yeah. Okay, that is the end of the chat for now, and it means it is the end of the stream for now. It has been 2 hours, that's crazy. All right, thank you very much to all of you who joined me on this session. John, for sharing your knowledge on Monday and joining me today. Mage and Tail for helping me learn about the cursor thing. That was super fun. Thank you to Aria, Seawitz, Aviated Views Sound, You are the best. I will see you again, I want to say on Friday, because I have been here for 2 hours. So I'm going to take tomorrow off. And on Friday, we will either return to the buttons or we will do something with the oscilloscope that I got yesterday because I want to play around with an oscilloscope. So we may do some analysis on the circuit that is the VU meter that we soldered together many streams ago. Anyway, I see you again on Friday. It was great to be here with you all. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you for watching the stream, you know how great it has been. Or maybe it sucked, and I am glad that you stuck with me. And soon we'll all be back together for some more coding or talking or chilling. The next time I'll be streaming.